Welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with Daniel.
And Daniel.
And today we are going to be doing another one of our top 8 debates. Daniel, what debate are we doing today?
So, Daniel over here threw me a bone, especially after we did the top 8 debate Rio Grande games. He's like, you know what, let's let you pick something here, and we're doing the top 8 fantasy flight games.
All right. So we're sticking to our publishers. Now I realize I threw you a bone with the Kickstarter once too, or the crowdsource. So now I am indebted one bone being thrown.
Yeah, I play tested enough of your games. I think we're even.
All right, sounds good. If you're calling us, if you're officially stating, this is on recording, that you're saying we are even, I will accept it.
We're even for now until you ask me to join another convention to help us teach your games.
Correct. Yeah, which hopefully will be soon. I'm hoping we'll have conventions sooner than later, but it looks like later. So if you're watching this live, thank you for tuning in. If you're watching this at a later date, this is still during the lockdown, of course, with COVID-19. So we're playing a lot of solo games online, but that doesn't mean that we haven't played any of these top 8. In fact, we'll go over the clarifications because there's going to be an honorable mention from the People's Choice that we're going to be talking about here in a bit. 2 honorable mentions even. Yeah, so Daniel, what have you been playing lately?
So, I'm going to go ahead and let you start this because you'll see why.
Okay, sounds good. I have been playing, of course, a lot of solo games.
Same.
I'm now in 40% of Fire. We're on level 4, basically. Every 10% is another level. Fire is a solo game from Freedom and Freeze, where it's basically Space Invaders. You know, you're blasting the spaceships, and it gets progressively harder. What makes it interesting is that it's really, really difficult to manage everything properly and make sure that you're hitting everything as efficiently as possible. Because what you do is you multiply the number of cards or the number of crosshairs times how much it exceeds 10. So, for example, as soon as that pile exceeds 10, if I have, say, 12, then the amount that it exceeds is 2. So you always minus 10 from that amount. So if you hit exactly 10, that's a bad thing, because then it'll be 0. But then you multiply that number by the number of cards. Let's say it took 7 cards. Well, I have 14 points of power that I can apply towards one of the rows, which is pretty good. But after every shot, you have to remove one of those cards from the game. So it makes it's interesting. You don't want to get rid of your low cards because then you can't build it up to that point and you won't have as many multipliers, but you don't want to get rid of your high cards to push it way over for the multipliers. So there's 2 very different strong strategies in going into it because you have to kind of mitigate which cards you're removing from the game. And every time I've beaten it, I've been down to like the last shot possible, which is exactly how I won. It's really cool. Every chapter, every level adds a little bit more to it. So that's the first solo game I'm going to talk about.
Alright, so I have been playing a couple solo games, in fact, 3, but I'm going to first mention what I've been doing as well. I just received Nations, the board game, from the Miniature Market sale, and I'm learning the rules. That's the main thing I'm trying to learn, because there is a solo play mechanism in that game itself, but oh my god, is that game a bit of a bear to rules. And there's no watch it played, or there's a few run-throughs, like Rado's run-throughs, but Rado, as much as I like him, he's hard to learn a game from, because he goes on tangents.
That's how I feel like when I'm reading the rule book. It's like, well, this mechanism kind of reminds me of that. Oh wait, hold on. What did I read? Now I don't even know. I feel that if you played Nations the dice game, and this is just a guess, and maybe our viewers can
Never
confirm.
played Nations the dice game.
Well, I feel like if you played it first, that might help, because Nations the dice game is a fairly simple dice game where I know it uses a lot of the same mechanisms, but resources
every review I've seen of the 2, they're fairly different. So if you know how to play one, it doesn't really help you with the other.
I don't know. I feel like it's a good introduction into it, because instead of just getting set number of resources in like the Nations the board game, Nations the dice game, you're rolling specific dice. But like the knowledge track, I understand, is the same. How you get new leaders and different monuments, those are very similar. So it might be worth looking into. that, and I really like Nations the Dice game, so it would be an excuse for
Yeah,
me to
so
play it.
I want more Civilization games. I'm still looking at trying to get through the Ages second edition. I got that. I have Tapestry. I know a lot of people not a big fan of that as Civilization game itself, but I enjoy it. But yeah, so I'm looking to get more. One of my favorite video games is Civilization, the video game Sid Meier's,
Yeah.
and I just want to get that in a board game aspect of it. I'm actually thinking about buying Through the Ages app for my phone just to play it.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
And
No.
I heard that the app is actually a really good integration of it.
An integration of the Sid Meier's Civilization.
No, of Through the Ages.
Oh, Through the Ages. It is available on Board Game Arena if you and I want to learn how to play it.
It'd be interesting. I mean, we'd be there forever.
Yeah, I've heard it's a minimum few hours at least, but at least online it's quicker, and you can just
So
kind
the
of click.
Nations is 40 minutes apiece. So I have two more
Okay.
games on my list, but I'll go ahead and let you shoot off another one of yours.
Okay, the next solo game that I just recently bought, because I finally found it for sale here locally for not full retail, is Proving Grounds, a solo game from Kane Klenko, which automatically has my interest.
Is there dice in it?
There is dice in it, and
Okay.
each round you are limited to 1 minute. But here's the thing: it's not a speed rolling game.
That's a King Klinko game through and through. You're
Right,
only allowed
exactly.
a certain amount of time to roll dice.
So the way it works is really interesting. So first off, you're going to be facing off against 6 different characters. The idea is, I guess, the main character, she was found guilty of some kind of heinous crime. I didn't read the story of it yet. I just jumped straight into the game. But she was found guilty, and she has to use trial by combat to prove her innocence. So she is fighting against 6 different people, warriors or guards or whatever, and she has to survive. Basically, she has to kill 8 people before she dies. So the way it works is that if you don't attack one of the characters, since there's 6 spots, each one corresponds to a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. If you don't attack the character, I want to say monster for some reason, they won't attack you. So 0 dice on the card, you're good, right? If you attack him with 2 or more dice, then you do damage potentially if you've rolled enough dice that shows on the card. So it'll either say 2, 3, or 4 plus on the card. If you did that many dice, then you move the token up. If you get it all the way to the top, you've defeated it. And so some of them get progressively harder. Some of them will award you certain color of dice as a bonus, like yellow dice count as 2. But if you roll exactly 1 die on that number, then it attacks you and the marker goes down. If it gets to the bottom, then you suffer a wound, and then it's reset back to the second to last spot, which is brutal and makes it very difficult at first. Here's what's neat about that, though. When you're rolling the dice, you can only roll sets of numbers. So if you have a single, yeah?
It's going to get a little loud here in a minute. My recyclable is about to be picked up.
Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, if let's say I roll 5 dice, and I have 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, and a 4. Obviously, I don't want the 1, 3, or 4 because they're singles. You can't re-roll singles. You can only re-roll sets of numbers. So those 3 2s that I have, if I want to try and get my 1, 3, and 4 to be or to have more than 1 and not have them hit me, I have to re-roll my 2s. And so that little choice right there, you could just sit there and math it out as perfectly as possible. But that's why he adds the 1 minute timer. It's not so much a speed race against the clock, and more often than not, you'll finish before the minute. But that's just so that way you can't just sit there and figure out the absolute perfect situation. You're pressed against the time. It works really well. I enjoyed it. I lost, and I am probably going to play it again today. I really did enjoy it. So that was Proving Grounds by Kane Klenko and Renegade Games.
Okay, so the second game that I've been playing it a lot since I got it, and that is Cartographers. I really enjoy it. It's a nice little solo game. It takes 10, 15 minutes. if that. I just sit here like when I'm editing, when I'm exporting a video, it takes a little while, so I just bust out cartographers and play a game, and then move back over to the editing files when it's ready. So I just sit there and play it. It's a nice little flip and write game. You flip out some cards. There's 4 seasons that you're playing in, so when you're flipping out cards, depending on the numbers on the cards, will the seasons change. So I believe spring and summer are both 8, and then fall is 7, and winter is 6. So once you surpass those numbers, that's the end of the season. So you want to try to fill up your sheet as best as possible. So if you surround mountains, you get a coin, which will help you later on. There's a mini expansion I think that's coming up where if you use your coins, they'll let you buy a hero or some actions. There's a mini expansion that if you pre-ordered it, you got that. I'm probably looking to buying it from Thunderworks Games itself. There are bad stuff, so you have monsters that will come out and you have to put them somewhere on the map, and for every space next to a monster that isn't filled in is negative points. Each season scores in 2 different ways, so you'll have an area that says A, B, C, D, and so spring will score A and B, so you want to meet those requirements to get your score from there. And then summer will score B and C, and so you want to make sure you still concentrate on B, but ignore A and go after C. Sometimes you might want to set yourself up for the next round to score because C and D are going to score. So maybe, okay, this card flipped up. Maybe I want to start this. I know I won't get any points right now, but it might help me in the next round. And so do stuff like that. So I really enjoy it. It's a really good game. It gets a little samey because there's only 4 monster cards in the game right now. Or I think there may be 8. After a couple plays, you'll see them all the way through. I know you can buy some more monsters. I know you could buy like the expansion I was telling you about where you can get like the trades and the weapons and stuff like that to help you. I know there's going to be a Kickstarter later this year for cartographers, a second point of cartographers where it's a standalone game, but you can also add it into and play it with actual base game of cartographers. I really enjoy it. And the thing is, the shapes they're interesting because they're the polyomino. So you're building like L's, like Tetris style
Right.
shapes, but there's also 2 parts that you can do on it. Sometimes they'll come up and say, hey, if you only build this one that's a 2 or a 3 instead of a 4, so it's going to take up less space, you get a coin. So the coins can be helpful. Coins are points at the end of the game as well. So I really enjoyed it. It's actually one of my favorite roll and writes, flip and writes out there. I've had so much fun since I've gotten it.
Yeah, I can't wait till we actually give it a shot. It didn't look that great at first for me, but every flip and right that I'm so far played, I'm enjoying a lot. So yeah, I'm in.
All right, and so do you have one more, or are you done?
I have one more that I just got in the mail. 2 days ago, and I've already played it with my kids, and it's Costa Rica.
How is it?
It's like a board game version of Ink and Gold.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Ink and Gold is just a group push your luck game. What makes it interesting is that whoever the expedition leader is, they choose which path the whole group goes on. So if let's say us 3 are playing, right? You, me, and my son, right? We each have our meeple in each of the groups. Let's say I'm the group leader. I get to flip over one of the tiles, and we put our groups there. It's going to have one of 6 different types of animals. Sometimes it's doubled. Sometimes it has 2 different kinds. So, for example, it might be panther or toucan, whatever. And then at that point, I choose whether I want to take it. And then if I pass, then you get to choose whether you want to take all the tiles that are flipped up. If you pass, then my son gets to choose that. If we all pass, then I continue the expedition and go on to another tile. Why this all matters is because as soon as you decide to take all the tiles, you take all of the face-up ones and the expedition is over, and then you remove your meeple from that expedition. So you can no longer be part of that group. So let's say I end up doing that. Well, the next time you're an expedition leader or my son, you could move that group instead and only choose between you and him. And I just don't have the choice. However, some of them have mosquitoes on it, and if you flip over a second mosquito, there's a little bit of push your luck, you discard the 2 tiles that have mosquitoes on it, and the expedition leader only takes the tiles that are remaining and still discards their meeple. And yes, it did happen where the first 2 tiles had mosquitoes. So it's like, I didn't get anything.
Did you shuffle the tiles, Danny?
We did as a group. But also, you can only go adjacent adjacent to the tiles that are there. So if I make a path that cuts off one of the other groups, well, all of the meeples in that group are gone because they just can't go on that expedition anymore. So there's quite a bit of choice to it. They have different textures on the background, either mountain, forest, or river, that have the different types of animals and different quantities of mosquitoes too. So like panthers, and I forget what the other one is for the mountains. Those are way more mosquito infested.
You'd figure like the lakes and stuff like that would be more mosquito infested.
Yeah, you would assume, but that's not quite how it worked.
They don't want to be accurate. See how they are? How these game designers are?
Right, exactly. Just making stuff up willy-nilly. What was interesting, though, about it is, so that's Matthew Dunstan, which I'm starting to learn that I like his games quite a bit. But the co-designer on Costa Rica was Brett J. Gilbert, which I don't know if you've heard his name before.
No.
But I also ordered Mandala, which is a co-design of Brett J. Gilbert. And he actually has more games on his list than I thought. I decided, all right, well, I have 2 games from him now. Let's see what else I have. And there's, I think, like 33 designs or something like that, and quite a few that we've heard of. So we'll go over that later, I think. But that's the third one. I had a blast playing it. My kids enjoyed it. I completely destroyed it. It wasn't even close. I felt bad. But my daughter was just kind of like, ooh, it's a frog. I want that. And then would just take like a single tile, and then it's like, but you don't understand. You're out of the expedition forever from that point on. She's like, that's fine.
But she's got a frog.
But she's got a frog. Right.
Alrighty, so my third game is a nice way to segue into our honorable mentions. It is actually my first honorable mention, and this is a game that I'm playing 2 scenarios in it. I haven't played it in a while with my buddy Bryce. We've been playing the 2-player version of it. This is a solo game that I've been playing a lot of and dig a lot of and want to get expansions for, and that is Arkham Horror.
The card game. Yep.
And so I really enjoy this. It's also my first honorable mention, as I said, and it's gives me that Arkham Horror lore, and we're going to be talking about that here in a little bit when we get into the top 8 debate. But it's plays a lot quicker. So out of like the Arkham Horror files, you got this one, you got Eldritch Horror, the Arkham Horror games, Mansions of Madness, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second shortest. I can play this within an hour, get the scenario done within an hour, and I'll get what I want out of it. The build-up is a bear, and it's interesting how the cards play. It's hard to describe. That you're using them, you can either use them to help you mitigate like bad things that are going on. You can use them as equipment that will help you throughout the game. So it depends. And what happens is there's a blind bag pull that I don't even use the bag pull anymore. I have an app that does it for me.
Oh, nice.
So it makes it so much easier. But the game is fun, amazing. I failed the third scenario like 3 times because it's that tough, but eventually I'll get it. I have it all set up. So the way you're supposed to do it is if you're playing a 1-player game, you can go with 1 investigator. It's fine. But a lot of people recommend just playing the 2 investigators. This way you have control of what's going on, know what you could do without having to worry about a partner. And so I really enjoy it. This can actually play up to 4 people if you have 2 base games. But I prefer 1 to 2 players. I think it's simple as 1 to 2 player game because more people, there's just more going on, honestly.
Yeah.
The bad stuff will happen. It's like a whole deck of cards on its own. You unlock certain areas, you investigate certain areas, certain things come at you. So yeah, it's actually fun. There's 3 scenarios in the base game. I do have a mini expansion in it that I want to get to, as well as I'm looking into getting the the first expansion for Dunwich Legacy, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
And that's also my first honorable mention.
Well, there we go. Let's jump into the honorable mentions then. My first honorable mention is also a cooperative Cthulhu game from Fantasy Flight. Not the same as yours. I bet you can guess what it is.
Didn't I?
Huh?
I mentioned it, didn't I?
You didn't. You said Eldritch Horror.
So I'm going to say Elder Signs.
Yes, sir. Elder Sign. Phenomenal little dice drafting game. There is another one. There is another game that uses a similar mechanism called Age of War that also... Yep, Elder Sign, yeah. Age of War is by Reiner Knizia that uses the same dice mechanism, and it's like an area control game. I both really like those because I like that dice mechanism, and it's like a 45-minute game. It's really quick. It's easy to play, easy to pick up, and it gives you a Cthulhu feel without having to go through hours of just like, oh god. But
there's one thing I hate about this game. One thing.
How small the player tokens are?
Those freaking little face tokens are like that big. So when you're trying to, which one's my character? Where is he?
And the image is so small it blends into the background of the
really
card.
Does.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I think they just had that much extra room on the punch board. They're like, oh wait, we forgot player pieces. Let's put those in.
Yeah, let's put those on.
Yeah,
Jesus.
That's the only thing I don't like about it too. But other than that, the game is phenomenal. Good components. Really enjoyable. A lot of fun. Yeah, I enjoy it. The Elder Sign is my first honorable mention.
So, Arkham Horror. I have, just so you know, I do have 4 honorable mentions. That's why I've decided to use the Arkham Horror as a segue here. My next one is the other game that I actually own, only it's no longer under Fantasy Flight license. I own the Cool Mini or Come On Limited version of it, and that is my token Reiner Knizia game, Blue Moon City.
Yep, Blue Moon City.
I really enjoy this game. It's a nice little, I wouldn't say tug of war, but you're competing, especially if you're doing the 2-player or just against the other players, you're competing against the other players to try to build up the tower first, be the first one to a certain amount of points. I think in a 2-player game it's 12. I don't know what it is in the 4-player game. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so you're constantly doing this. You're, if I remember correctly, playing cards, moving your character around to try to appease the dragons, getting matching sets and stuff like that. Really good game. I haven't played it in a while, but I really, really enjoyed it. And like I said, it's my token Reiner Knizia, because you always need at least one Uwe Rosenberg, one Stefan Feld, and one Reiner Knizia. I still need to get my Uwe Rosenberg. I just haven't got that one yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Reiner Knizia, that goes into my next honorable mention, which, can you guess it? It's from Fantasy Flight, and it's an abstract strategy game from Reiner Knizia.
So the only Knizia game I know that Fantasy Flight had was Art of War, but you had already mentioned it with Elder Signs.
Yeah. Ingenious.
Did not know that.
Hexagonal tiles with 6 different symbols. When you place down the tile, you count up the number of points for every one of the tokens that match that color in each one of the other 5 directions. You do that twice, and it has a very interesting idea where as soon as you get 18 points for one of the tokens, you get to take an extra turn. But really, your final score is whichever is the lowest token, which is so smart. You have to work on everything a little bit, even though it's really easy to run away with, like, just one color, you're constantly adding on to it. But if you can focus on blue and 3 other colors, but if you have your yellow token at 1 point, well, then you have 1 point at the end of the game. It's very cool. I like it a lot. It's ingenious. I won't belabor it anymore.
All right, so my next one here is going back to Art of War. Art of War comes in a box like that big. It's a very small game. And so the next game on my list also comes in a small box, and it's Game of Thrones theme.
Hand of the King.
Oh yeah, I dig this game for such a small game and really a small footprint on the table too. I've had so much fun playing this game because all you're doing is you're moving Varys down the line. You're trying to take the entire house of that line that you could get. So if you move Varys orthogonally, let's say through a column, and there's 3 Starks in there. Well, I'm going to collect all those Starks because he went down that line. That's going to give me the most points. However, I got to be careful with what I'm doing because I'm trying to get the majority of a house. This way I can win the house. Starks, I think, has 8 people in the grid. So if I only have 3 and someone else has 4, I need to make sure I get that last one. This way I can block them from getting the points of controlling the house. If somebody else gets it or that person gets it, he has control of Starks, so that's going to get him points. If you take the last card of a house, you also get a bonus ability. If I remember correctly, I forget what they're called, but you can do it where you can eliminate someone in the King's Landing is what the little grid is called. So you can kill someone
Yeah.
in King's Landing is one of the cards, if I remember correctly. So there's different abilities that you could do. You could take somebody's cards, and I love that. So it's just real simple. You move Varys, you collect the cards, goes to the next person. If you take the last one, you get a special ability to use at your pleasure. Person with the most points at the end of the game wins. And you can have control. So I can have control of the Starks and the Lannisters at the same time, as long as I control those houses.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that one a lot. As soon as I pulled out my last honorable mention, I looked at that in my game closet and I was like, okay, yeah, it's so good. But it is not my number one honorable mention, which is probably my favorite Fantasy Flight game, and I don't think they even own it anymore. And that came from their silver line. You are battling over Italy. Do you know which game it is?
No, Florenza?
No, it is an area control game. It's a card game. It is Condottiere.
No, never even heard of that one.
Exactly. This one was so hard to find, and I had never heard of it either until I played it on a whim on one of the game nights back when I lived in Albuquerque. And they're like, "Yeah, you want to try this easy little card game? Sure, why not?" And I wasn't expecting much of anything on it. Ever since I saw that, it was out of print, and I wanted it. So when I finally found a copy of it, it was expensive. But you have a board here, pretty good quality board, and you have area control where you're going to be putting your tokens on the different regions.
That cut is really weird.
It's a trifold, and that's
Yeah.
because it fits in the in the box
the
almost
slim
perfectly.
box. It's just the way you were holding it looked like it was only cut at that one spot.
Oh yeah, it's off center, yeah. And so you have the numbers from like 1 to 10, but then you also have other like priests, you have leaders, you have bad cards like famines and stuff like that, plagues, and yeah, all you're basically doing is you're going in a circle, bidding on different regions for whichever one is being battled over, and in order to stay in the battle, you have to play cards that will hopefully keep you in line. So, for example, if you have a total of 6, I can play cards to mine, but unless they exceed 6, I'm not going to win that area. But there's so many different cards that have minus abilities, but let you draw certain cards if you don't win, and it's super smart. It's a great area control game, and I think they just came out with a new edition of it, but it's still pretty hard to find. Condottiere, I can't recommend it highly enough.
So you mentioned that was your favorite Fantasy Flight game.
Probably.
I can't really say the same for my next one, or Arkham Horror. The LCG is up there though. That's probably my top 3 of the Fantasy Flight games. Other Signs probably in the top 10 as well. But there's actually games on the list that I really enjoy for Fantasy Flight, well, one of which I don't own, but I want to own.
Yeah.
But my final honorable mention is along the same lines as one of the games on our list over here, and that is Star Wars Imperial Assault. If you like Descent, it gives you the Star Wars theme on the Descent mechanism. Everything I've heard, it plays exactly like Descent. It just puts the Star Wars license on it, and I really enjoyed it. I played it a couple times. I enjoyed it. I don't own it. Almost bought it until Barnes & Noble sold out of it. They had an amazing deal where you could pick up the base game for $25. I tried jumping on it, but it sold out like right away.
Yeah, understandably.
Yeah. So I do. A buddy of mine does own it. I haven't played it in a while, but I really enjoy it. It just gives you that. It's a 1 versus all. So if you're playing, I believe it can go up to 5 people. If you're playing 5 people, one person takes the Empire with Darth Vader and all that, and everybody else is playing the Rebel Alliance against the Darth Vader character. So in a sense, someone's playing the Overlord, and everybody else is playing the heroes trying to go against the Dungeon Master, I guess you could say, or the Demon Lord. I don't know what it is. Descent, I've actually never played Descent myself.
Yeah.
But in Star Wars Imperial Assault, I have played and enjoyed. And that's a big part is because I am a huge, huge Star Wars nerd. I have a vinyl clock of Star Wars hanging in my living room.
Yep, that kind of says it right there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I mean, you're wearing a
my
Beatles
mother-in-law
shirt.
gave me that for Christmas, so that tells you how much of a Star Wars nerd. When my mother-in-law knows I love Star Wars.
Right? I mean, let's just think about this for a minute. You're wearing a Beatles shirt. You're a Star Wars fan. You're sitting in front of a bunch of board games. You weren't born in the right decade, were you?
Probably not.
Oh man, that's great. Before we talk about the People's Choice honorable mentions, let's talk about how we come up with the top 8 list, and then we'll go into why those are on the list. So,
Also, the breakdown how we score them.
exactly. So, first off, when we make our top 8 list, we pick either a publisher, designer, family of games, mechanism, whatever category we are debating over. We go to boardgamegeek.com and we get all of the cards that are all of the games that are matching that category. So this we search Fantasy Flight, and then we put them in order of rank. So the highest ranked on Board Game Geek will be the top one. But then we have to eliminate any games that either Daniel and I have not played or one of us has only played in order to make a solid argument for each of those. There will be times where we trade on which one we're arguing for and why it should or should not go on. So in order to have a fairly unbiased debate over that, we have to only do the ones that we have instead of just going, okay, well, I've played this, but this one I have no idea what it's about. So the other one goes on because we played it.
Yeah, exactly. And the way we do this for us to get to it, and you may have heard it in past broadcasts of this, is we have 5 categories that we tie break for everything. So, and they all break down in their own forms as well. So you have ease of play or replayability, or actually it's just ease of play now.
Yep.
And that's just because you have, and this breaks down to simplicity or familiarity of the mechanism. So is it easy for someone to play this because they know the mechanism already? That's part of the game. So case in point, a worker placement game. Worker placement, a lot of people have played that.
Yeah.
Are they familiar with it? And so the familiarity.
Or like King of Tokyo, like King of Tokyo is based off of Yahtzee. A lot of people know Yahtzee. Yeah.
So likely to get to the table initially, and this is going to go with like the theme and stuff like that. So an Eldritch Horror game might not get to the table as fast as, say, as the Lord of the Rings game, because more people are familiar with Lord of the Rings. They're more than likely going to want to play that.
Yep.
As well as, does the game have a hard time when it comes to analysis paralysis? Yep. And that is it prone to that? And that could make it where it makes the game last longer than it really should, or your brain is just on fire because you're trying to figure out the best strategies.
Right. So
those are the ease of play.
Which, and the reason we put that in ease of play is because if we're playing a complex game where a lot of stuff changes between players every turn, well, that means that you don't have the other players' turns to pre-plan it. You have to wait till everything's done changing. Then finally, when you have the choices, well, like now I have to figure out all these moving parts that I didn't know until you just finished your turn.
Yeah, is it easy for me to like, oh, they did all that, well, at least I can do this now? Or is it, oh God, they changed everything, what can I do now on my turn? And it just takes forever for you to do your turn. Exactly.
Then we have art and production. So this is always tricky when we stick with one publisher, and normally, more often than not, the later in the publishing line that the game is, the better the production. Yeah, they tend to get better. But this is broken down into art, how good, and this is fairly subjective, but how good we feel the art is and matches the game. The pieces and components. Are you playing with plastic minis or cardboard cutouts?
Cutouts, yeah.
And design, and that is how well does the graphic design match the gameplay, and also how easy does it correlate to the game. I mean, if it's full of symbols that you have to research every turn, that's not good graphic design, and as far as that goes.
And it goes along with one of our other topics here, which is game immersion. Does the design give you an immersion feel to the theme of the game? And so I'll go ahead and mention game immersion is another one that we do. And the 3 that breaks down for this is, does the theme match the mechanisms?
Yep.
And that means, I'm just going to go ahead and say there's a game on our list here in the top 8 debate called Outer Rim. It's a pick-up-deliver bounty hunter game. Does that match the mechanism? Does it match the theme? And so that's the big part. That's the thing we're going to argue. Does that match that?
Yeah.
As well as interacting with other players. Does your turn affect what other players have to do? Do you block them? Do you move something in their way? Do you force them to go around something? Does it interact with the other players? That's a very important factor when it comes to game immersion. Because you always want that one friend that, you son of a...
Yeah, it's like, stop stealing my piece. Well, it benefits me. Sorry.
And memorable moments. are you going to talk about this after you play it? Or when someone says, hey, let's play this game. Oh, yeah, that's the game where I took that thing from Danny, so...
Yeah, exactly. And then we have meaningful choices. How does your choice impact others? That's similar to immersion, but less of like it can be less of table talk, but more of like, am I going to ultimately make an arbitrary choice, which is another one? Can I take my turn playing fairly randomly and still have a chance of being well in that turn? That's a very important thing. How much?
And not only that, with impacting other players when you're playing a co-op, does my action hurt the team and
Yes.
stuff like that when it means to impacting other players?
Exactly. And then impacting the long-term strategy. Can you pre-plan a number of turns, or are you going to be playing a very different game out of your control at the end of the game than at the beginning? That's a really important thing for choices.
Like in the beginning, if you have a long-term strategy, is there an ability to pivot? If something happens where you have to change your strategy to a new strategy, so that's where that comes into too.
Yep, how important those early on choices matter.
Yeah.
And then we have replay value.
And this one goes with the length of time and scaling well. And what we mean by that is, does the 2-player game play as well as the 4-player game or the 5-player game? But also, does it become super extended when you add more players, or is it relatively short? So, like I said, he said Elder Signs was 45 minutes. Arkham Horror, the LCG, as a 1-player game, takes about an hour. As a 2-player game, can go up to about an hour and a half. It just depends. But if I'm playing a 4-player game, this little simple card game can become a 2-hour game, and that's just no bueno.
Exactly. An hour per player is a lot. And then we also have additional content. That's as of the time that we record it, and it's somewhat speculative. It's how many expansions or how much more content are given with the expansions, or app integration, which is something that we'll talk about later on, or just furthering the storyline. And then on top of that, how much likely is it to add more content? Like if this game is made where it's like, oh well, every time I play it, they're gonna make more and more and more and keep me as far as that. That's gonna hit that table so much more often.
And the last thing in replay value is the minimum number of plays for a full experience. And that basically means, is it a campaign game? So is that going to give me 50 plays of the game? Or, case in point, we mentioned this with Horrified before. Do I just need to play 6 games to get the full overall experience with that game? So that is also an important value for a game. So like, as I was mentioning about Arkham Horror LCG, there's expansions upon expansions upon expansions.
Yep.
But the expandability makes it great. And it's a campaign game, so each expansion adds more to the campaign.
Yep.
So it gives me more to get a full experience.
Yeah, the ability to play multiple times is so much more valuable in Arkham Horror than, say, something like a Keyforge that doesn't have an evolving story.
Yeah.
Now, I mean,
don't get me wrong, it's expandable with all the decks, but beside the
point. That's the advantage of Keyforge, is just how every deck is different, right? So those are going to be the 5 categories that we base it off of.
And before we take our quick break, let's go ahead and do the audience honorable mentions. I'll pull up the thing real quick, and it has it right here.
Yeah. Now these honorable mentions were added to the poll from our viewers. And they go over a slew of different games that either Daniel and I haven't played or one of us has not played. But they were popular enough where they got votes and they were mentioned as far as our poll.
And so, just to let everybody know, there are no comments this time for us to read. No one posted it, but they did post games. So there are 2 honorable mentions that are not in our top 8 debate. Actually, the second highest vote getter is not in our top 8 debate. And that is Star Wars Rebellion. Neither one of us have played it. I do own the game. I'm just trying to get the rules. And that's the thing about Fantasy Flight games. Their rules can be a bit of a bear to learn how to play. And because their games are so grandiose. But everything I hear about Star Wars Rebellion, it's a Star Wars game in the box. So you're the Empire or the Rebels fighting against each other. And so it's an amazing game. The component quality of this game is amazing. They have like mini... So I have 3 Death Stars in my box. 2 fully formed Death Stars, and one of the Death Stars from the 3rd movie, or in this case, if you go with the prequels, the 6th movie, where it's unfinished.
Right.
So I really want to get to this to the table. I really want to play it. The component quality of this is through the roof when it comes to Star Wars. In fact, you can actually see it on my shelf right above my shoulder over there. But yeah, so Star Wars Rebellion had 9 votes.
It does look fun.
And do you know what the other game is?
Off the top of my head, probably Arkham Horror.
Nope.
Hmm.
It's another Star Wars game.
Oh, another Star Wars. Well, we have X-Wing on the list. We have Outer Rim.
You're on the same track when it came to X-Wing.
On the
Armada.
same track. Oh, Armada. Yeah, I can't believe I forgot about that one. Yeah, Star Wars Armada. Yeah, that makes sense.
Everything we can say about X-Wing, which we probably will, because it is in our top 8 debate, you can say about Armada. The only thing about Armada, it's bigger, grandiose. It's the bigger ships. So you have like the Star Destroyers going up against the... I don't even know what the Star Wars Rebel ships are called because they got so many names for the different ones. But but yeah, because and it works because the Rebel ships are a conglomerate of ships, whereas the Star Destroyers are all the same uniform because they're an actual military. And so, and if you haven't noticed, I'm more of on the Empire side, so
Oh yeah,
that's why I know their stuff.
yeah, we know that. And probably the viewers at home do now. All right, well then, those are the 2 honorable mentions from our poll. Thank you for giving those input, and thanks for voting on those as well. As always, sometimes these categories will end in a wash, and what that means is that they tie. We just can't choose between the two. Art and production might do that a lot in this, and if that's the case, then the people at home get the tiebreaker. So we use that data very importantly. So we're gonna take a very quick break before we get into the first round. And which we'll talk about what 8 games are on our list, and we will get started. So hang out with us for a few minutes, and we'll be right back.